All right, welcome back to the SCR podcast, otherwise known as the Start the Rebuild podcast.
Mhm.
I'm your co-host Tim Fournier. Alongside a new guest today, we have Taggart Kent.
Yes, sir. I
Yeah, so
appreciate y'all for having me.
of course. So we met through TikTok. You stitched or reacted to one of my
Mhm.
videos, and I was like, "Oh, this is pretty cool. Like, not many people are doing this to my videos." And
Mhm.
we just follow each other and liking and commenting on each other's videos. And I said, "Hey, why not hop on the podcast, talk a little draft?" So, do you wanna? I'll put it in the description too, but do you want to just kind of plug your stuff? I know you have a TikTok. I don't know if there's an Instagram to follow or anything like that too.
Yeah, I've got the Instagram. It's taggyswaggyyy. It's the same thing as the TikTok, but with a couple more Y's. I know it's a little annoying, but taggyswaggy with one Y was just taken by another account that for some reason had it taggyswaggy. One day I'm gonna have the at just tag, and it's gonna be amazing. But right now is not that day.
So you can tag and something.
Yes,
That's
yes, you
that's
see the
that's
vision.
pretty sweet. That's pretty sweet. Um, yeah, so I guess we can get right into it. Um, so the first question I want to go through in the draft is your favorite pick. I'm gonna go by day. So day one being
Mhm.
the first round, day two being rounds 2 and 3, day three being rounds 4 through 7. Who was your favorite pick from day one?
I guess my favorite pick overall, I would go with I'm gonna go the Dolphins. I believe the Dolphins took him, if I'm not mistaken. Chop Robinson.
Mm-hmm.
The dude's a freak athlete, and especially when it comes to edge rushers, I love that. You can have all the technique in the world, all the power in the world, but if you don't have like elite bend, you're not gonna find success in the league. And Chop Robinson has that elite bend. But if I just had to take my favorite player overall that got taken in the draft, that I think at this point there's no way I don't see him not failing is the Chargers taking Joe Alt. He's one of the three players in this draft. I would say him, Caleb Williams, and Marvin Harrison that I think, barring injuries, there's absolutely no way these guys don't work out. Joe Alt is a freak athlete. You don't see dudes 6'8" moving like that. He moves like a running back from side to side. You don't see guys that big move that quick. The only guy I can think of in recent memory was also in this draft and was taken at 29th or 27th, excuse me, by the Cowboys and Tyler Guyton.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Joe Alt is great. One thing that really interests me is whenever you see a 6'8", 6'9" tackle like that, the one kind of thing you think about is leverage wise, like if this guy's this tall, are people just gonna get under his pads, be able to kind of move him around? But
Yeah.
one of the most insane things that I keep seeing about him is that he's so good at keeping his pad level low and his leverage really great and a great base that he'll be 6'9" and he'll be looking up at edge rushers because his pad level is so good. He's a really high level tackle prospect. And I had made a video about the Chargers and kind of the direction the organization was going about a month and a half ago. So about a month and a half before the draft. And I was saying Chargers fans better be ready for them to either take Joe Alt or trade back and take a tackle and not get the Malik Neighbors or Ruma Dunze that a lot of the fans wanted. And I didn't the TikTok video didn't get that much traction, but I reposted on Instagram and it
Mhm.
got like 130,000 views. And it was just like hundreds of comments of Chargers saying, like, this will never happen. That would be the dumbest thing ever for them to take offensive tackle. Why would they ever do that? They have no receivers. And here we are.
It's
Um,
so weird how on different platforms videos can go crazy.
do
Like you post a video on TikTok, it fuck nothing, and then
yeah.
Instagram it goes insane.
Do you post the same stuff on Instagram?
I don't. I have not. I have not tried that method, but I've seen like
Yeah.
I've every now and then I'll scroll TikTok and I'll see a video and it'll be like what, 5 likes, and then somebody will send it to me on Instagram a month later and it's got like 400,000 views. It's like, whoa,
Yeah.
what the heck is happening right now?
Yeah. I feel like people just comment more and stuff on it. I'm trying
Yeah.
to go through every single team and give them draft grades right now. I'm
Hmm.
only through three of them, but I'll
Hmm.
post it on um TikTok and it'll be like, oh yeah, I love my team's draft. I like these players, blah blah blah. And then I'll
Hmm.
get asked if I have mental disabilities on Instagram. Like that's the difference. It's like, holy crap, dude.
The hate is insane.
Yeah, it's
Mhm.
crazy. One last thing I want to say about the things you said. Chop Robinson, I thought was really interesting. I think I'm a little lower on him. But at the same time, there's kind of those top three edge rushers, and they were all gone. And I think he was
Yeah.
in a tier of his own from the next edge rusher, like edge rusher five. Um, and I think it says a lot about the Chargers because they are Chargers, Dolphins, because they Jalen Phillips and Bradley Chubb ended the year being hurt with significant injuries, and they lost Andrew Van Ginkel in free agency.
Mhm.
So, that could be saying a lot about what they think the health of their two guys is looking like right now.
Yeah, and if you think of that, that room, Chop Robinson's the type of player similar to Tyler Guyton, which is why I'm kind of disappointed the Cowboys took him, is that they kind of need a step or maybe a couple years to sit behind somebody and learn the game
Yeah.
just because they're so unpolished that I think in Miami he has the opportunity to do. He's not going to be thrown into it with the Wolves and be like, hey, go be a great run defender day one,
Hmm.
which I think is a good situation for him. And as far as Chargers fans being disappointed that they didn't take a wide receiver, I think it's ridiculous. You can make the argument that out of the 15 greatest offensive tackles in the league, every single one of them was taken in the first round, right? The offensive tackle, guys that size, the great ones that move that well, they don't just grow on trees, right?
Hmm.
Great wide receivers, especially guys like Romo Dunce and Malik Neighbors. You get a couple of those guys a year. Not to mention, you can find great wide receivers later in the draft. I can make an argument that the best wide receiver in the league right now wasn't even a first round pick, and the best wide receiver of all time wasn't even a first round pick. So sitting here and complaining that we're taking Joe Alt, someone who is one of the best tackle prospects we've seen in years. Some people compare him to Joe Thomas. I think it's just because their name is Joe, but someone who's like that and like being disappointed in taking someone like that is insane.
Yeah, especially when they had such a high second round pick, which is where that kind of sweet spot of the draft ended up being
Mhm.
that like 25 to 35, 40 range for wide receivers. Like, imagine how much worse their first two picks would have looked like if it was Malik Neighbors and then I don't know, like seventh offensive tackle.
Like
Like
Kingsley
you feel like
Suamataia.
the Cowboys were maybe just forcing the Tyler Guyton pick because they just needed
Mhm.
the tackle. Like, and the
Mhm.
Chargers were having a player there. Like, I don't know. Um, but moving on to kind of like what my favorite picks. I'm gonna kind of cheat and do two as well. First, I thought another edge rusher, Laiatu Latu at 15 to the Colts. I actually really love him. He doesn't have that like nuclear athleticism first step that Chop Robinson has. He's kind of the complete opposite. He's like extremely refined in terms of his rush moves and his counters. He's kind of got every single tool in the bag. I tend to, in general, I feel like lean in a preference more towards that type of player. And he doesn't have that insane athleticism, but I think, meets the benchmarks of what's needed. The only other problem, which I can't really speak on that much, was he had to medically retire at Washington first, because of a neck injury.
Mhm.
So, I mean, I'm not a doctor, so I can't really speak that much on what that really means for him. But that removed from it, I honestly thought he was the best defensive player in this draft, because of how refined he is. And the other one I want to throw out there that I'm a Ravens fan. I don't know if you knew that.
Mhm.
The Steelers guy, Troy Fatanu, who I absolutely love. Um, at offensive tackle. So that kind of sucked, but I have to kind of shout that out because he was one of my favorite players in the draft.
And the Steelers need offensive line. I feel like they've needed offensive line for the past 10 years. It's insane. Yeah, Latu, I've had to watch him at UCLA. He terrorized us earlier in the year. He didn't do that great, but
Well, who's
because the
your
rest of the
college?
teams,
Who's your
Oregon.
Oh, gotcha.
So I know how good he is. As far as like the Colts, the way they normally go, I was expecting a Chop Robinson here just because they normally draft freak athletes. So going a
Yeah,
guy like Leatu Latu, I was kind of surprised. But I like the pick as well. It's not one of my favorites out of the first round, but it's
sure.
not like one I'm sitting here like, "Wow, what are we thinking?"
Sure.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, I hadn't put too much thought into that, but you're right. The Chris Ballard, the GM of the Colts, normally like there's a joke that I always see on like the PFF podcast that I listen to and stuff that they're
Mhm.
like the Colts draft board is literally just RAS scores in order and they just pick from that.
They went and did it in the second round, went right back to it, Adonai
Yeah.
Mitchell. But the first
Yeah.
round, they went from it a little, ran away from it a little bit. There wasn't
Yeah.
very many picks in the first round that I was like genuinely angry at, other than the Falcons pick,
Yeah,
which
sure.
I know you're a Penix fan, so maybe not that
I
big of a hater of it.
yeah, I guess we can get into that a little bit off like a little tangent here.
Hmm.
Um I have endorsed my support in the pick, which I know is very not common. Like I think people are being too quick to just already just like pick the team that lost the draft or especially after day one. And I am higher on Penix than the consensus as well to even begin with. Um, but I do think this is kind of I compared it to the Packers situation, and I know it's not a one-to-one situation because the Packers picked Jordan Love at like 26 or whatever the heck it was, and they picked Penix at 8. But if you look at kind of the Packers model, for the last year, we've been saying, how could they possibly go from Brett Favre and then draft Aaron Rodgers and then draft Jordan Love? And the common denominator is they sit for 2 to 3 years. And like, how do they keep doing this? Meanwhile, the Bears have literally never had a quarterback throw for 4,000 yards in their entire existence. Like, so there's teams that are on these complete other ends of the spectrum, like teams that cannot find a quarterback, and then you find a team like this that just back to back to back. It seems like we've only seen a year of good play from Jordan Love, really like 10 games. But um if you look at the value of that, and the Packers have really been taking advantage of that strategy. But if you looked at the value of that, it would be worth something much higher. Like if we knew what Jordan Love was going to become and the Packers had, like a top 5 pick that year, you could very easily construct an argument where still taking Jordan Love and sitting him for a few years would be worth it. Or another way I like to frame this, if Michael Penix, again, I'm higher than him than the consensus. If he starts in, let's say, 3 years, Kirk plays for 3 years and then they cut him, they have no dead money. Penix is the future, and he is the franchise quarterback. That would be worth like I don't know what you would call it. Like they wouldn't that him hitting would be worth how do I explain this? 3 first round picks, something like that.
Mhm.
Do you understand that like thought process that I have at
Yeah.
least? Like
Mhm.
how valuable that would be, where it's gonna be like, would you rather have if Michael Penix is the franchise guy in 3 years, you're not gonna be sitting there saying, wow, I really wish we had Dallas Turner right now.
Exactly. Yeah, because quarterback is so much more of a valuable position. Like I was
Yeah.
telling my friend when it happened, because we
Hmm.
were sitting there watching the draft. I said, I get the process here, and I understand if you like Michael Penix as a player, take Penix. It's just the age for me. Let's say for them, for the Kirk contract, they gave him 4 years, 180 million, right? Best case scenario for them, Kirk plays all 4 years, plays them well, maybe wins playoff games. Who knows? Wins a Super Bowl based on how their team is. That means Penix isn't starting a full season until he's 29 years old. And to me, that's like I understand maybe what if he hits, right? Let's say he does and he's 29. One that would be insane. We'd see nothing like it in the NFL. But then what, you're gonna get like 6 good years out of him and then you have to pay him immediately. I would much rather still think he's a worse prospect than Penix. I would have much rather taken McCarthy there, or I would have gotten the McCarthy pick a little more just because of the age thing.
Hmm.
That's what it turns me off with Penix is we're taking a guy who's 24 years old to sit behind someone who's 36. Like this might be the oldest QB room in the league that has a rookie in it.
Yeah.
Uh, like I don't hate Penix. I think you could have traded back and gotten him as well. And to the point with the Packers thing, at least the Packers are taking young quarterbacks. Again,
Mhm.
24 years old on Michael Penix. He could turn out and we could all be looking stupid for saying that I said it was the dumbest pick in the history of the draft. A day later, we could all look dumb. I very well understand that, but I just think at the moment, I didn't get it too much.
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely shocking to me too. I
Mhm.
think the age thing is, I don't know, like quarterbacks are playing so late in their careers now
Yeah,
that if he's, if he is 28 by the time he um starts 28, 29, and he's got 6 or 7 years of good quarterback play, the value of 6 to 7 years of good quarterback play is still,
worse than eight
in
overall.
my opinion, granted, it's shifted down later in the timeline for your franchise, but more valuable than the 50-50 chance on an edge rusher working out. And he could be gone in 4 years because he is asking for $100 million. I don't
Mhm.
know. I think at the fundamental part of the draft, people um tend to look at it too much in terms of we have a need here, we're using the draft to fill that need. Where in
Mhm.
reality, the way to get the most value out of the draft is how do I use this asset to give the most value to our team in the future? I think in terms of needs and things like that too, people don't account for the fact that there's a very good chance that the rookie you draft isn't going to be ready to be a really good player for a year or two. So that need is just going to still essentially be there for a year or two. When
Mhm.
that's a lot of draft overall philosophy.
Yeah,
Like if I were a GM, I feel like I would very much take the strategy of taking best player available no matter what and what's going to be most valuable to my team. And then really utilizing the like cheaper post July 1st cuts to fill the immediate needs. Because you don't know what's going to be available at your pick anyway, or what the draft class is going to look like. So it's kind
Mhm.
of tough to just bank on the draft and then take the player and then operate as if that need is filled.
Yeah. And at the end of the day, if you're in the Falcons draft room and you're looking at the edge rushers, you're looking at Dallas Turner, you're looking at Leatu Latu, you're looking at Jared Verse, Chop Robinson. If you don't believe any of them, believe in any of them, I like take the quarterback if you believe in them over the edge rushers. Especially when you have an opportunity to pick eight for a team that I don't think is going to pick that high again for a couple years, barring injury, of course. And yeah, best player available, in my opinion, is the best way to go in the draft, especially in the first round. And you kind of fill out your needs in the
Yeah.
back half. You think of the Raiders, they just took Michael Mayer last year, a tight end, and you go out and you get the best player available in Brock Bowers in this year. And a lot of people were hating on that for some reason because it was the only position they had like shored up for the
Mhm.
next couple of years. But Brock Bowers is a guy who's so good you can put him anywhere. They talk about him like a big slot. They say he's less of a tight end anyway. You can play him in the slot and play Michael Mayer in line as a tight end. Michael Mayer's a better blocker anyway. They were arguing they should have gone defense there, a corner. Nah, if Brock Bowers is on the board, you take Brock Bowers, especially at 15. Is that what they picked him at? Yeah,
I think it was 13. Yeah.
he was 13. Yeah, 13. Yeah.
Um, yeah, I love that. I think they can also kind of coexist a little bit more too. Like you said, Bauer's playing a little bit more in the slot, Mayer being that more inline guy. I think the Raiders, honestly, from the reports I've seen, really wanted Penix. And once they kind of were left with no quarterback on the board worth taking, they kind of just were like, well, who's the highest graded
Best
guy
player
we can take?
available.
Yeah.
Yeah,
All right.
which
So
then
what was that?
I said not bad,
Yeah,
not bad at all.
not bad at all. So moving on. Um, do you have a favorite day two pick?
Mm. Again, it'd be cheating. Not cheating, but I've already mentioned it. AD Mitchell, to get
Mm.
him at what did they get him? Was it 40? It was that would be 52. To get AD Mitchell at 52, I don't know what it. I guess it was the injury stuff with him that made him fall. To
Yeah, I
get a
think
guy
there
like that that
was,
people were talking about in like the mid 20s,
I think there was some
50 is insane.
yeah, character concerns really.
Was it? I thought it was character concerns with Jatavion Sanders. That's why he fell.
Might have been with him. I don't know. But AD Mitchell, the thing I kept hearing over and over again was like uh when he knew he wasn't getting the ball, he would just like stop his route halfway through. He wouldn't run his route hard.
Yeah.
Obviously, that comes with more like off the field stuff. I saw
Mhm.
some crazy headline. I don't know who it was, but someone wrote an article about him and they kind of explained these things. But then they also just like in the like list of things that they think he didn't do well that would cause character concerns, listed that he had diabetes, and like almost as in like a way that he like doesn't take care of his body or something. I
Derogatory.
didn't read the whole article, but that was the way they like framed the like Bleacher Report notification, and I was like, "What?" I think so. Like realistically, I think I heard more about it, and
Mhm.
it was not as blatant as that. But like, of course, the headline is gonna make it be like crazy.
Yeah. Just trying to get people to click on your guy's
Yeah,
diabetes. Like, what?
yeah.
That
I didn't mean
isn't,
to cut you
is it
off, but
type 2 or something? That's like, no, you're good. Isn't like type 2 something where it's like you don't even, it's not even like a health thing. It's just the way your body breaks down sugar or something.
I'm pretty sure. Like, I don't know. Like
Yeah.
Mark Andrews has it. It was the same as
Mhm.
Mark Andrews, whatever he has, and obviously he's completely fine with it. But yeah, um, that was a great pick. My two favorite. There's a lot, honestly. I think the
There is,
biggest
yes.
two, three values I would say. I'm gonna literally give three here. In the second round, I thought Jerzon Newton falling all the way
That's
to
a good one.
36 was crazy. If he went like top 15, I wouldn't have even been surprised. And they get him all the way in the second round, which I thought was crazy, and I thought it was great process by the Commanders to just take best player available, like we were just talking about.
Mhm.
I thought the Eagles taking Cooper DeJean, um, I thought he would have been a really good pick in their first round with their first round pick at 22, and then getting him in the second round and already getting Quinyon Mitchell when they really needed secondary depth and people that can just, I think for the last second half of the season, we were just like, why can the Eagles defense not tackle, which was infuriating. And they get two really physical corners, which I think is great. And then the last one I want to mention, which you're gonna like this, was the Raiders getting Jackson Powers Johnson in the second round, which
I
I thought,
really like the Raiders draft.
yeah.
He's a really good player. He's really physical. I understand there's some injury concerns with him, but
Mhm.
still really good. As far as your point of the Eagles getting DeJean, you mentioned it exactly. They had like the Eagles were okay covering, but what killed them was they were so bad at tackling.
Yeah,
And
dude.
so you get a guy in Quinyon Mitchell who can cover, and then you go get a guy in Cooper DeJean who can do it all. He can tackle. I really, really, really hope that they don't waste his talent and play him at safety. Not that it would be a waste, but I think he's so much
Mhm.
more of a like a Swiss Army knife to a defense. To just like stick him at free safety would be doing a disservice to his talent. You mentioned two NFC East team. That's depressing. Those are two great picks, though. I really like the Jerzon Newton picks, and then the Cooper DeJean. And then a lot of people hated it, but I liked the Cowboys going Marshawn Nealand. I understand it's not a
Yeah.
need necessarily, but what this team needed over the past couple of years is physicality. And Marshawn Nealand does that exactly, and he stops the run. He's a guy you can play on first down. Maybe he's not the best pass rusher yet, but you can develop him into that. But if anything else, if he doesn't become a good pass rusher, he can stop the run, which is exactly what the Cowboys have needed.
Yeah. Back to the DeJean thing. What's interesting about him, which I thought uh works out really well, is they might play him at safety, but they have Vic Fangio now as a defensive coordinator, which is a big like cover three, cover four system where the safeties are really used like down closer to the box area where he won't like necessarily be playing like deep middle of field safety, where I think he kind of like fits in that more closer to the line of scrimmage type of scheme. Um, so I think that is going to work out. Um, but unless there's anything else from day two you want to talk about, I'm kind of cool there if you want to keep moving.
I really like the Rams getting Braden Fisk. I
Mm,
know he's a little undersized, but he's a great athlete. Not much of a run defender, but there's anybody in the draft at D tackle who could rush the passer in this draft, which I think was most of them at the top. Byron Murphy, Jerzon Newton. Braden Fisk might be the best at doing just that. Not much of a run stopper. That's probably why he didn't go before those two guys, but still, like that is such a good value for the second round. There's another guy I thought could sneak in into the back end of the first, and then you got Jared Verse, who's kind of a power guy. So
Hmm.
You're almost. I saw a video of it. I believe it was yesterday. You're almost recreating Aaron Donald in the aggregate. Moneyball.
That a Esquire Sports video?
Yes, yes, it was.
The first thing that I thought of when I saw your videos was that I thought you were very similar, like
Like
in
his
style.
cadence.
Yeah,
Mhm.
which I
Yeah, I
think is
do
cool
tend to
because I
follow
really
similar.
like that type of content.
Mhm. Yeah,
Um,
I like his cadence. It's very like it's easy to digest.
yeah, definitely, definitely. Um, well, I will say, I feel like I'm seeing even in some of your videos, and I think it's a reason why I really like your videos, is that I think I tend to think very differently, but I don't think your process is wrong. It
Yeah.
was just like different tendencies and things like that. Like I personally didn't really love the Braden Fisk take, or not take, but as a player, um, he's super athletic, but he's got really short arms, and I felt like he didn't really produce that much. 6-year player, blah blah blah. But regardless of that, and we don't need to get hung up on a one player. I
Mhm.
think it's very, very interesting because I feel like a lot of people will, I don't know, come on a podcast or whatever and just kind of like group think their way through every prospect and be like, oh yeah, like I agree, like I love that guy. I think it's
Mhm.
cool that we have differing opinions on stuff like that.
Yeah, like the Penix thing.
Yeah. Like that's what creates good conversation about this stuff.
Exactly.
So I really, really like I like that you brought that up, even though I don't necessarily agree, if that
Mhm.
makes sense.
Yeah.
All right. Actually, one other thing I want to mention from day two. Um, my favorite linebacker in this draft, I think this is another thing that we kind of differ on. My favorite linebacker was Junior Colson from Michigan because I feel like he's a little bit more developed at a position that I think takes a lot more mental abilities than you realize, especially as a
Mhm.
young player, where I tend to value that a little bit more than sheer athleticism. And I think obviously the Michigan connection, Harbaugh getting tougher, everything like that. But I'm pretty sure you really, really like Edgerrin Cooper, correct?
I do. I do like
Yeah.
Edgerrin Cooper, and I don't hate Colston. Because linebacker is one of those things that I would be more willing to give up a guy who can move extremely quick, excuse me. Uh, but at that position, I want guys who can move side to side really quick,
Mhm.
somebody who can really plug up the run, and it even helps there to be smart, like you're saying, to maybe you don't have the most physical gifts, but at least you know what's going to happen on a given play. So it doesn't really matter because you're going to be there at a
Yeah.
spot. But that comes with time to me. And if I'm going to take a guy who's going to develop with time, I want to take the good athlete like Edgerrin Cooper or even Jeremiah Trotter, who like they're going to miss run fits sometimes just because they're being over eager, but they can make up for it because there's not very many people who can move like them.
Right. Definitely.
I wanted
Um,
to mention the Rams though. I like the most of their draft, but I think taking Blake Corum in the third round when you have what's his name just led the league in yards per game. Why
Kyron
am I?
Williams.
Yeah, when you have Kyron Williams, I don't I don't understand why we're taking an old guy injury prone, not injury prone, but it's a guy coming off of an injury who's got unfathomable amounts of tread on his tires in the third round when you could have gotten Jalen Wright at that same pick.
Oh, that's true. You're big on Jalen Wright too, right?
Yeah, it was the least
Yeah.
surprising thing I've ever seen in my life that he went to Miami.
Yeah, I know. He seems like one of those guys that he just has that one elite trait, and then if you just put him in the right spot to
Mhm.
really put him in places where he's going to succeed, then he's going to blow up. And I mean, Miami is a perfect spot for that. You literally just saw that with Devin Achane last year. Um, so that'll be really interesting. I actually did kind of like the Corum pick because I feel like he's very similar to Kyron Williams, and their kind of plan there is just Kyron Williams probably has what 2 years left on his contract, and then
Mhm.
kind of
Yeah, here comes Blake.
move that along, and you don't really have to pay a running back at all.
Yeah, and you can
But
also use to both of them. It's not saying that you can't,
yeah,
but
definitely,
yeah, just in the third round. I don't know. I did like
definitely.
their Cam Kitchens pick though. He's a
Hmm.
player I like. My friend goes to the University of Miami, so I watch their games a lot, and he's super physical. That's
Sure.
what I like at safeties.
Do you would you say you watch more college football or NFL football?
No,
Or like what are
definitely
you a
more
bigger fan of?
NFL.
Me
I
too.
really only watch Oregon, and like whenever Georgia or any like big games on TV on Saturday, I'll watch it. But it's definitely the NFL. As far as like sitting here on a Tuesday and watching DeAndre Swift film, I don't do that for the NCAA.
Fair. I actually wanted to ask you about that. I saw a couple of your videos where you were um like watching video on DeAndre Swift and things like that. What do
Mhm.
you personally do? Because I think I saw you were doing some stuff to like increase your knowledge of the game and learn how to scout or like just learn more other than just passively consuming content.
What I'll do is I'll consume. I'll watch like Brett Coleman do film
Hmm.
breakdowns as well, and I'll also I go to UNT and I kind of work around the football team, and I'll passively learn from them specific things. I work more with the defense, so I'm learning more
Oh,
defensive side of the ball things.
what do you do?
I kind of just like their assistant for the linebackers coach, so I kind of just run around doing things for him.
That's
If he
because
needs like a power,
I was an equipment manager at Wisconsin.
mhm. It's pretty similar to what I do. I started off as an equipment manager, and then I just became like his personal like assistant.
Awesome.
So I kind of learned passively from them, which is pretty cool. Which is why I think I'm more of a defensive guy, even though offense gets all the views. So
Sure.
got to go with the DeAndre Swift film, not fucking Damone Clark film.
That's fair. That's fair. I didn't know you worked for the team. That's awesome.
Mhm.
How do you like that?
It's cool. It's not something like I'd want to keep doing. I don't want to go into coaching. I don't think it's my avenue, but it's definitely something like if I'm looking for a journalism job, like, oh hey, I used to work with football, I know about it, so I could do like breakdown and stuff.
Yeah, that's sweet, dude. So are you like I mean, not a GA, obviously, because you're not a grad student, but
Not yet.
kind of like working with them and stuff? Because I think
Hmm.
I had some guys like that too.
Yeah, we did. I work Monday through Thursday for them, and then I serve on the weekends. I don't get paid a lot with them though. It's like $9 an hour,
Yeah, I was
which is
just
like,
paid minimum wage too.
mhm.
Um, Definitely a big commitment, but I really like doing it.
I do too. I like when they're in there like discussing players that they're looking to target through recruiting or like how they're gonna use guys this season. It's super like insightful. It's like I got an
Yeah.
inside scoop.
Yeah, that's very cool. Because I just did equipment stuff, so I mean, I didn't really get that. Like, I wasn't like in a meeting room at like a team
Mhm,
or like a position group meeting or anything like
mhm.
that. But that's really cool. Um, I wanted to ask you about that because I just been doing a lot of stuff to try to increase my own knowledge so I can be more knowledgeable when I talk about this stuff. And you know, I also just love learning about this stuff, but I feel
Yeah.
like it is sometimes a little not inaccessible because it's not inaccessible, but it's not like it's not like learning something in school where there's just like a textbook and then you read it and then you have to like really go out of your way, I feel like.
Yeah, I feel like the best thing to do is talking to people who have either worked in coaching or played football, period, just because yeah, see the same thing with basketball. I feel like a lot of basketball people we listen to on the internet don't even play the sport. When I feel like the best thing you could go do is talk to somebody who has played basketball and
Mhm.
know the ins and out of it. It's the same thing with football, but at least with football, I think or feel like most of the people that have played it or talk about it have at least played it a little bit, just because it's so popular in America, or
Yeah,
that they've at least involved themselves in some way in the sport.
definitely. All right, well, I feel like to be honest, there's probably a lot of picks in on day two that we can just be like, oh yeah, I really liked that. Um,
Mhm.
but just to keep this moving, who's your favorite? What are some guys you liked on day three?
I did not get to watch much on Saturday, so I don't know as much as some others, but I do know I did like the Jalen Wright pick. I mentioned that as well. Um, I liked I don't know if he went day three. Did he? Was it Malachi Corley who picked him up? I feel like he went in the second
Went
round.
in the third round to the
He went in
Jets,
the third round to the
which I
Jets.
really
I
like
really liked
that
Malachi
fit
Corley.
too.
I do. The kid like he's small, a bit undersized, but uh, he is so much more physical than he seems,
Mhm.
and he moves extremely well. I wanted the Cowboys to get him, even though I know we don't really need receiver, but he's kind of like a luxury pick, just because like the Cowboys need more players like that, dudes who are just insanely physical. They're not going to take shit from anybody, kind of like a Jake Ferguson kind of player, you know. And
Yeah,
then I liked
Johnson
Brandon
guy.
Dorless, another player the Falcons
Sure.
picked up. I really liked the Falcons draft outside of Penix. I think they went for guys who are good athletes, and then the only guy that they didn't take that wasn't a good athlete was Braylon Trice, who is a good run defender and he's very
Yeah.
smart.
I like their draft. I obviously I like the Penix pick a little bit more than other people. The and I liked their picks the third round and on.
Mm,
The the Rook Aurora pick, I think that's how you say
a
it,
little weird. Yeah.
with trading up for him. And I was so excited when it happened because I was like, I'm already kind of a supporter of the Penix pick. I like it's tough to keep seeing this get put down so much. And I was like, oh, they're gonna trade up and they're gonna take a top 10 to 15 defensive talent anyway, and they're gonna get Johnny Newton. And you can say like, oh, if you just flip the picks, then it looks great. And then they take him over Newton, and I was like, what are we doing?
Newton
Um,
and Trice, or not Trice, Fisk, both of
yeah,
them. Like, ooh,
right.
what are we doing there?
I was
I
like,
do like their Jace McClellan pick though. I feel like taking
yeah,
an Alabama running back is never a bad thing.
yeah. And then I really liked the Trice and Dorless pick, like you were saying. And I think there was one other guy they took that I liked. I'm trying to think of who that was. I'm going to look it up really quickly here, if I can get it. But the Aurora pick, I was not a huge fan of.
Mhm.
Um, I don't know, but we the that really confused me. But
Yeah.
my favorite picks from day three, let me pull this up again. Um, there was one I really wanted to bring up. I really like the Spencer Rattler pick for the Saints, kind of along that same line of thinking of just investing in the quarterback position. Am I betting on Spencer Rattler to be like a long-term NFL starter? No. Do I think he has a lot of talent? And I also kind of like the fact that he had to kind of go through a lot of adversity after being kind of like not a high character guy and then losing his job and then to Caleb Williams and then having to transfer and then kind of improving his play somewhere else. But I think he went to a good spot in the Saints where he's definitely not going to be challenging for the starting job and it's just Derek Carr. But at the same time, you're not so sold on Derek Carr's future that he could never have a chance in the future. And they threw a
Yeah.
5th round pick on it, and I feel like that's a good investment.
That's like the perfect scenario that I would put a quarterback like him in. And then I can't believe I glossed over it. Jatavion Sanders in the fourth round, first pick of the
Yeah.
fourth round. Uh, Probably my favorite pick of the draft. I understand he fell because of some character concerns, but Brett Coleman made a tweet about it not too long ago. He is a guy who's really not that far off from his name is eluding me right now. Why? 13th pick to the Raiders. Brock Bowers. He's not that far off from Brock Bowers, and there's similar players in that they're big slots. And I think getting a guy like that in a fourth round, someone who's they kind of went into this draft with the mindset that we're going to help out Bryce Young was super good. I really liked their draft overall. I don't think they
Yeah.
wasted a single pick.
What about two Oregon guys in Troy Franklin and Kyrie Jackson? Watch them more than
Unreal that Troy Franklin fell that
yeah.
far.
That's weird.
Unreal. I understand the frame, and then I've seen some people complain about his gauntlet drill. That feels similar to people bringing up that test score with CJ Stroud. Like, what are we like? Can we watch the film, please? We're talking about a
Yeah.
combine drill as the reason we're not taking a player. The dude's really fast. You're understand. There are questions about his play strength. Absolutely. I've seen the guy get flattened by nickel corners and like on screens. I was watching a clip of him the other day. They threw a screen out to Bucky Irving. The dude was shoved to the ground by some 5'9" slot corner. So there are concerns about that play strength. But there shouldn't be concerns about that speed, and there shouldn't be concerns about that height. You don't find guys that are that tall that move exactly that quick. And then who was the other player that you mentioned?
Well, just on Troy Franklin, I thought he was kind of.
Hmm.
I was a little. There's some people. There were hives of people that were really high on Troy Franklin, or like this guy could go at the end of the first round, and there are some guys that were really low on him. I would say it was a little lower than consensus, but at the same time, fourth round was like, how has this guy not been taken yet?
How was he
I
not
was
on
a
day
little
two? That
worried
was
about
insane.
the physicality stuff. But then also the added benefit is pairing him back up with Bo Nix.
Smart.
That's pretty sweet. And then I
Smart.
was saying Kyrie Jackson, the corner.
Kyrie Jackson, oh, he's okay. He kind of frustrated me a little bit just because he's so inconsistent. But he's another guy who's pretty physical, which I liked out of him. I think we replaced him better this year, bringing in Jabbar Muhammad. But as far as like, he's kind of like a whatever player for me. He's cool. Uh, he doesn't he's not exceptionally long, which is what I like out of corners, or like an exceptionally good athlete. He's just kind of like a decent player, which is fine. And then I think the Buccaneers got Bucky Irving, who's another Oregon
Mhm.
player. I know you see the 40 time, and you're like, how does this guy play in the NFL? But he's extremely twitchy, and he's got short distance burst that I think makes him playable in the league.
Yeah, definitely. I think at first I was kind of like, why are they taking him when they have names escaping me? They're running back.
Rojo, Ron
What's that?
Jones,
No,
Ronald Jones.
he's like a receiving back this
Oh,
year.
from Syracuse, Sean Tucker, is that his name?
No, they're starter right now.
Oh, the Buccaneers?
Yeah. Why can't I think of his name? Holy crap. He oh my God.
Ah, Rashad White.
Yeah, Rashad White. I don't know
Ronald
why I couldn't
Jones.
think
Where
of
the
his
fuck
name.
am I getting that?
I feel like that's a halfway decent comp for Bucky Irving. Like I feel like they've filled that similar role, like probably like more third down back, but have some person second down capabilities. I think we saw a lot of that with Rashad White. He's not the most efficient runner, but is a really good receiving back. Um, so I feel like they're a little redundant.
Hmm.
But it could be the same exact thing that I was kind of just talking about with Kyron Williams and Blake Corum of, okay, we're gonna get this guy in the building here, and maybe he won't get the most work in year one or two, but then we're gonna save money when why the heck are we gonna pay Rashad White when we have Bucky Irving?
I can't believe I pulled their fourth string running back before I pulled Rashad White.
Yeah, and then you
Like,
pull upstate New York legend Sean Tucker out.
yeah.
I couldn't think of Rashad White's name either for some reason. One other guy I wanted to bring up, and then we can kind of move on to a different topic. I don't really love the landing spot for his long-term success and the fact that he fell all the way to the, what was it, sixth or seventh? I think sixth. Johnny Wilson from Florida State. He went to the Eagles, but he's a 6'7" wide receiver with I think 36-inch arms, which is like we talk all the time about how we want tackles to have super long arms, and these guys are 6'6" or whatever, and they're got long arms with 35-inch arms, and he's got like the longest wingspan in the entire draft. But the other thing about him is I think he actually you see that with a wide receiver, and you're like, like maybe he should have been a tight end in a different life, and he's probably not gonna be able to move well at wide receiver. I think he actually has decent movement skills for a wide receiver. He's that big and he ran like a 4.5, so he's not like really slow.
Mhm.
So I thought he fell further than he should have. I actually think he in such a great wide receiver class, I think because of that he got kind of overlooked when in reality he has like freakish traits that I think is so worth taking a flyer on. He just went to the Eagles where he's probably not going to get on the field much.
Yeah, I've seen there were a lot of people, especially on Cowboys Twitter, that were really high on him. I just think at the end of the day, yeah, bigger guy, but I don't think he's a good enough of an athlete to play receiver, and I don't think he's strong enough to play tight end. He's kind of in the middle there. It's like,
Yeah.
where do you play him at that point? I don't. So the sixth
Kind of
round,
a yeah. I feel like he's kind of a player that you have to take and have a specific plan for.
Mhm.
And if he's going in the 6th round, you probably don't have that, which I think
If you're
is
that, yeah, if you're that average of an athlete at that size, I feel like you have to be a great jump ball catcher, and he's just kind of like a decent one. He's not like a generational guy, but still, like I don't hate like taking a chance on a dude who is 6'7" and
like
does move as
someone
well as he
like
does for that size.
right. I feel like a really good comparison for him would be Jawan Johnson from the Saints, who was like a really big receiver like that kind of got converted to tight end and essentially just plays big slot receiver.
Yeah,
Um,
another Oregon legend.
yeah, there you go. Wait, did he go to Oregon?
He did.
Did he do did he transfer to Penn State after that?
Hmm. He
Gotcha.
started off, or I think he might have started at Penn State.
And then went to
Let's see,
Oregon?
90% sure. Because I think he was a part of the team that had Panay Sewell and
Hmm.
Kayvon Thibodeau on it. He, like when they were freshmen.
Gotcha. That makes
Yeah,
sense.
he started off at Oregon and went to Penn State.
Gotcha. People move around so much that it's like, oh wow, I didn't realize he was there.
Yeah, other way around.
Uh,
He started at Penn State, went to Oregon. Okay.
okay. Um, like the other thing I heard the other day that I probably knew at some other point in my life that just completely forgot about. I had no idea that Puka Nacua was at Washington and was in the same room as Roma Dunze at first, and then transferred to BYU.
I know. He just couldn't get that wide receiver room was too stacked. He had to find a way to get
Who else was
some run
there?
somewhere.
Because he was young.
Jalen Polk, the three that were still there were there. They were all, I think they all were the same class.
But oh, okay. But I mean, who was there? Like he was like a freshman and sophomore, and then went and played 2 years at BYU, maybe
Hmm.
or two.
Yeah, I believe it was
Was there
two.
like guys that were like older than them that were good, or they're just like too young and not developed yet?
I just think they were too young. They were already, they're also poorly coached. They didn't have DeBoer yet.
Yeah.
So that's probably a big part of it as well.
It is
Just
crazy how good that program got.
immediately. And I felt like the past couple of years they really hadn't had like good recruiting classes, and then just out of nowhere they were the best team in the Pac-12.
And they have so many like good NFL caliber players.
They
Like you're
all over
talking
the
about that,
line,
like
multiple linemen.
yeah,
Yeah.
Penix, Fautanu, Rosengarten, and then obviously the receivers, all three got drafted in the first. I forget when McMillan went. I think like third, fourth to the Buccaneers. But
Mhm.
and then on defense they had Trice. Um, who else am I forgetting? I feel like there's
And
more.
there's still some guys on that defense that are going to be drafted. Like I mentioned, Jabbar Muhammad, who transferred to Oregon earlier. He will be drafted at corner next year. They've had NFL talent all over that field, which is insane.
It's crazy. Um, but yeah, so we kind of covered day one, day two, day three. I have two other topics I want to bring up. Um, First, one big thing with the draft, I feel like, especially with quarterbacks, people are so obsessed with like quarterback rankings. And then they look back in, 5, 6, 7, 8 years and they're like, where were we right? Where were we wrong? There's like Chris Sims who always has crazy quarterback rankings. And then people look back and see like, oh, maybe he was right on some things. And then it's like, how could you possibly be saying that? Um, but I think what gets kind of lost in translation is especially with quarterback, how important your environment is for your, and especially early in your career where you're kind of building confidence that like proving to yourself that you can play at this level. So I think it's honestly fair to have your quarterback rankings in a vacuum of who you think's the best, but then also change them a little bit based on where they go. So I want to know what were your quarterback rankings pre-draft, and based on where they landed, how did that change if it did?
So pre-draft, I would say it was pretty basic. Caleb 1, Drake 2. I'm gonna put Penix at 4 or 3, and then JJ at 4, and Jaden Daniels at 5. I'm really low on Jaden Daniels just because of his frame and the fact that he just takes way too many hits. And
Mhm.
then Belichick mentioned it on in the first day of the draft that when he scrambles to run. I like dudes who scramble to throw just because it makes them so much more difficult to defend because that threat to run is still there, but they're always looking to get the ball up the field just because it's more yards. And then
Sure.
Bo Nix at 5. I still don't think Bo Nix is a bad player, but uh, I just think his strengths, you think he's really accurate. He's really not that accurate as his completion percentage says. And he's really not that great of an athlete. He's kind of just like, he's all right, which is fine.
Yeah.
But based on situation for the quarterbacks, Caleb at one, obviously, that's probably the best situation the number one pick's ever been put in. I'm putting JJ McCarthy at two. I think out
Are
of
you
all of the
saying
quarterbacks,
situation is at two? Or are you saying now
now that he's
in their
there,
career forward, you're saying he has the
I,
second best future?
I think he'd be the
Okay.
second best quarterback in the draft class just because that Vikings team is so good. And I think if there was any situation where JJ McCarthy would go and he would succeed, I was saying it was Minnesota because they have already got a great receiver room. They've got Brian Flores, who's their defensive coordinator. That defense is going to be good for the next couple of years. I really don't envision like there was multiple worlds I envisioned JJ McCarthy being a bust. This is not one of them. I think if he's now that he's in Minnesota, I think there's a very good chance he's a good NFL starter, which is exactly what they needed at 11. And then third, I'm going Drake May. Fourth, I'm gonna go Jaden Daniels, and then fifth, I'm gonna go Penix just because sitting around. Or fourth, I'm gonna go Penix just because sitting around being no, yeah, fifth. Fifth, I'm gonna go Penix just because sitting around behind Kirk Cousins difficult, and then fifth, Bo Nix, the Broncos.
Gotcha. Yeah, so pre-draft, I had Caleb at one. I think Caleb has been like the consensus one for a while, and people understand that he's really good, but I still don't think the level to how good he's going to be and right away is publicly recognized enough still. Um,
Like the Bears are gonna start off 6-0, and people are gonna be like, "Whoa, what's going on right now?" But
yeah,
like, we told you.
yeah. I don't think people are really fully comprehending how good he's going to be and very quickly. Um, Two, I had Penix, which I know is not like I was happy to see that you had him at three. Um, I had him at two, but kind of with the caveat. Um, I thought he was my two, but May had the second highest upside. So it's kind of like if you had a good situation and he like if it was the Vikings, I probably would have gone Caleb May Penix because he had such a good situation and they had a decent like bridge guy already there and he could sit and if he wanted to take the swing on May, like I could very well see that. But anyway, I had Caleb one, Penix two. I can get more into that if we want. But May three, and then I had Daniels four, McCarthy five, Penix or Nix six. Um And I think Nix is a decent player as well. I think this is just a really good quarterback class. And then with the way the draft went, Caleb won. I it's really tough because McCarthy by far went to the best situation, but I like the other two players more. Um, if I'm betting on how their career shakes out, I think I'm gonna go. Mm, God, it's tough because I think the Patriots like really just have not done a good job to surround May with anything yet, and you have no
Mhm.
idea what that's going to look like in 5 years.
What's special receiver Juju right now? I will
Yeah,
say to McCarthy, another guy that it's just he has the tools. He's got a good arm. He's a good
yeah,
athlete,
he grew on
and
me a lot.
yeah, especially when I was seeing like some of those numbers on third down with him, that
Yeah,
he's just bailing them out of bad situations. He's
yeah,
a guy that like he said, he was growing on me as the
yeah,
draft process went on, and then having him go to Minnesota, I don't think it's crazy to say that he'd have a better career than Drake May just because of that.
yeah. So I have Penix at two, and the tough thing with Penix is I don't think he went to a bad situation, and she's just going
Mm-hmm.
to sit for
Say yeah,
2, 3, 4 years.
Falcons are still a good team.
Right. So I'm gonna go McCarthy two, Penix three, I guess. I'd like it's just if we're on a 15-year time horizon and Penix hits the ground running in 3 years, then so I'll go Caleb. Guess I'll go McCarthy, and then I'll go
Mhm.
Penix, and then May Daniels Nix. Um, and I still feel like Nix has a higher like honestly, I feel like he kind of has a higher floor than Daniel
Daniels.
May.
Daniel's floor is not playing because he's injured all the time,
It's
like
it's
RG3.
it's weird because I feel like he's going to be pretty good when he steps on the field. Like I feel like his
It's
floor
just
in terms of how good he is the day he walks into the building is actually pretty high. Like he's a 6-year player. I think fifth or sixth. And
sixth.
just like his skill set. But that's how I'd rank that. We can kind of move on. The last thing I want to talk about, I know we've kind of been going for a long time now, is I just know that you're a Cowboys fan and just wanted to get your overall thoughts on the Cowboys draft.
So I was talking to this guy at work who was saying he didn't like it, and I would understand when you were looking at it just from at face value. You look at taking a project tackle when you don't have Tyron Smith anymore in the first round. You look at taking an edge rusher in the second when you don't need one. And then you look at not taking a running back at all in the draft. I would understand hating it.
They
But
dropped that
let's think,
Zeke, right?
huh? They did bring
Did
back
right?
Zeke this morning, unfortunately. Yes. I hope we draft or not draft, like trade for a Damian Pierce or something. Please don't let Zeke be my RB1. I'll lose my mind. But no, when you like I understand not getting a running back. I understand taking an edge in the second round. I understand taking a project tackle. When you look at the reason the Cowboys have lost in the last 3 playoff games that they have, or even their just weaknesses in the regular season, it's been stopping the run and it's been running the ball and it's been physicality. And they went out in the first 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 picks, really, even with Kalen Carson, who's a physical corner. And they went out and got dudes who are physical. You could argue that their first round pick is the guy that's least physical on that group of players. uh, you getting out Marshawn Nealon, who's good at stopping the run. Tyler Guyton, everyone's saying he's a project. I really like. They're saying if you throw him out left tackle first game, he's going to get killed. I really don't think that's the case. I don't not trust our offensive line group to develop a good one. People said the same thing about Tyler Smith. They threw him out at left guard or left tackle that he was going to get killed, and now he's an all pro. Cooper Beebe, another exceptionally physical player, so much better. He's going to be so much better than Tyler Biotish at center. And then
Is he
Maris
gonna play center?
Liafu, he probably will. That's where we need him to play. Or they might have Zach Martin play center, but I
Hmm.
doubt it. And they went out this draft, and I like how they built the trenches. You can't. Everyone talks about how bad Dak played. He did. He played terribly in the playoff game, but you're not going to win a playoff game giving up 6 yards per carry. It's plain and simple. And you didn't go out and get a D tackle, but you went out and you emphasized getting big unstuffers like Marshawn Lee and even Justin Rogers in the later rounds. Not much of a pass rusher. He just kind of sits there and plug the hole. So yeah, I like how they went physicality. You can argue that there were some better players on the board with guys like Marshawn Elam or even the Notre Dame left tackle, left or linebacker Liafu. But still, like I don't think they missed it all. I think Tyler Guyton's going to end up being fine. That's Cooper Beebe is also going to. We might have that left side of the line plugged up for the next 15 years, which is sick. What'd you
Hmm.
think of the Ravens?
Well, just one thing on the Cowboys, I really liked how they getting Gutton. I was a little iffy on because he might be a little bit of a project, whatever. And it would be a little scary to put all of your eggs in one basket, where it's like I'm not saying it can't work out and it can't work out right away, but it's a little scary to like all your chips in and like he's our guy and we'll see what happens. But taking Cooper Beebe, I think is huge because I think that was a really good value. But now they have the flexibility to just go through training camp, see who their best five is. Is Tyler Smith going to play left tackle or can we just keep him at guard? But now they have the flexibility that both of those are a route they can take and they can just put their best five out there.
And I
As
will
far as
say
like, sorry, what?
you have concerns with Guyton at left tackle. He kind of struggled playing that position at senior day. Uh, at least they traded back. You trade back and you get the pick
Yeah.
that got BB. Absolutely fleeced the Lions. I think giving up a high third round pick was insane in that situation. There had to have been somebody calling to jump them. Uh, but if you were going to take Tyler Guyton, I was saying all day to some of my Cowboys friends, if you're going to take Guyton, trade back. And they did exactly that, and they got good value and ended up getting BB out of it.
Yeah, I think that's great process.
Mhm.
As far as the Ravens, their biggest need was also offensive tackle. But as we talked about before, you can't always treat the draft like a needs-based exercise. It's about
Mm.
getting the most value for your team. Um, And they got Nate Wiggins in the first round, who I think is really great. He's a little light, but he plays aggressively. So, and he's really young. He's only 20. So if you can put on a little bit more weight and get a little stronger, I think he's perfect. He ran like a 4.27 or a 40. So
Unreal
really
athlete.
athletic, crazy movement skills, and that's kind of what the Ravens are missing. Corner was an underrated need. The room thinned out in the offseason. Feels like they always have a thin corner room. And Marlon Humphrey is still very good, but he is kind of guaranteed to miss games every year at this point. Um, and they didn't really have that like freak athlete, freak movement skills corner that can just be, they have this really they take their number one wide receiver and just stick onto him throughout the play in man coverage or whatever it may be. So I love Nate Wiggins and I really like the value. They come back and do get a tackle and Roger Rosengarten from Washington. I think he's solid. I think he's a little light, but needs to add some play strength. But he's at least someone in the room they can develop. I still think on the offensive line, they're definitely a team that they always snipe the like training camp cuts where people like dump salary on a veteran that's got 2 to 3 years left of good play, and I feel like they'll probably do something similar. Um,
Like
I
David
think so.
Bakhtiari.
What's that?
Like David Bakhtiari or something.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see. Adisa Isaac from Penn State is a decent edge rusher. I thought he was all right. A lot of people really liked him. I think he's just kind of decent depth, and it was good value where you got him, but I'm not like doing backflips for him. Devontae Walker from North Carolina, I think adds something to the Ravens room that they didn't really have in like a really good deep threat with size. But he's not a very well-rounded receiver. That's kind of all he's got. But he at least adds an element to the room. So I don't hate it. TJ Tampa in the fourth round, I like it. It's good value. Um, Adds more to that cornerback depth that I just talked about that always seems thin for the Ravens. Some people were mocking him at the end of the first round, which I never really agreed with from what I was hearing about him, but nonetheless, good value. And then from there, they got, a backup quarterback and a running back that, maybe could fill in while Keaton Mitchell's getting healthier. And so I think some people in the media are going to give the Ravens like an A plus because people are really high on Isaac and they thought, Tampa and Rosengarten had a chance to sneak into the first round and they got him along with Nate Wiggins and all of that. So I'm a little lower than like the A pluses they're probably going to get from media grades. But at the same time, I'd still give it like a very good grade. If that makes sense.
Yeah, I liked it overall.
Yeah. I
I
can't really.
really like Nate Wiggins, another guy that's just
Yeah.
I love good athletes. Like
Yeah.
you can teach the technique and stuff. You can't teach a dude to run a 4.2 and be that long.
Yeah. Just he probably won't run a 4.2 when he's not 170 pounds. So,
Yeah.
but he is one of those guys. It's like he like finessed the combine pro day type of thing where he's really light for the combine and runs really fast. And then all of a sudden, a week later at his pro day, doesn't run the 40, but weighs 10 pounds heavier
Mm,
because, he probably just like drank a bunch of water and ate as
mm.
much as he possibly could in a week so he could get up to whatever it was.
His
So,
agent was cooking.
yeah, his agent was cooking. But that's pretty much all I had, unless you got anything else.
Was there any other team that you specifically felt like had a good draft? Maybe a favorite draft out of all the teams?
Hmm. Let me think about this. Um, I think as much as I hate to say it, I think the Steelers really did have a good draft. Um, yeah, I already talked about how they got Troy Fautanu. Zach Frazier is a guy I wasn't super high on, but he's a decently rated center prospect. I think Roman Wilson fits their offense really well from what they already have. Then they get Peyton Wilson, who's a really good athletic linebacker in the third, who I wasn't very high on, and he was getting late first round buzz, but getting him in the third, I think is really good value. And then also getting Mason McCormick, who's a really good interior offensive lineman. So I kind of hate to see the Steelers have that much success. But one
Mhm.
other team I want to bring up is actually the Broncos. For a team that felt like they had to go quarterback no matter what, they get the sixth one of the sixth round and didn't have a second round pick to come back in the third and get Jonah Ellis, who I liked, to then pair Bo Nix with Troy Franklin. They got another corner that I like in Chris Abrams Drain and Audric Estime is a pretty good haul when you're going into the draft, kind of like, all right, we have to take a quarterback at 12 no matter what, and we don't have a second round pick. Like, let's hope for the best.
Yeah, they really navigated well. I really like everyone was hating on the Bo Nix pick because they think Bo Nix is going to be a bad player. I really don't think he is. He's smart, plays well within a system. He's got Sean Payton behind him. He'll be fine. He's kind of like that Drew Brees mold where they don't have alien arms, but they're accurate.
Sure.
And then getting a guy like Troy Franklin, they've kind of been missing a deep threat in that group. That's what Jerry Judy was supposed to be a bit, and he just wasn't. And yeah, getting a guy like Troy Franklin who can fit that role is nice. I do like Abrams Train as well. Another pretty good athlete.
How about you? Anyone stick out?
I'm gonna refrain from saying the Eagles because we don't mess with that franchise over here. I'm gonna go the Panthers. A lot of people were hating on the Xavier Legette pick just because they're saying, "Oh, this is N'Keal Harry Part 2." But CJ Stroud mentioned it on that little podcast he was doing the draft day one with Micah Parsons. Uh,
Oh,
you don't need every receiver to be the same like alien route runner, a guy who can get open at an elite rate all the time. Sometimes you just need a guy like Xavier Legette who, if you get on the ball in space, I don't think there's very many people on earth who could tackle him. You think about it like a DK Metcalf, obviously, that he gets the comparisons to a lot, or like a Debo Samuel, who Debo Samuel's not the best route runner on the planet, but if you get him on a jet sweep, if you throw him a screen, or if you throw him a crosser, he's gonna run over some of these smaller corners. He's extremely difficult to bring down. And they already have a Deontay Johnson, who's kind of like your route running specialist there, a guy who can create separation. If you could just put Xavier Legette on a crosser or maybe give him a jet sweep out of the backfield, or even on a screen, he's going to be a good player. And then Jonathan Brooks, I really liked. I understand there's injury concerns, obviously, but when you put on the tape of him at Texas, like there, he really isn't that much worse than Bijan as a pure runner. Now, Bijan brings an element to the game as a receiver that he doesn't, but as a pure runner, Jonathan Brooks is very good. Again, just the injuries thing, tearing his ACL. That's why I didn't want the Cowboys to take him, just because we needed an immediate starter at running back. And I think taking a guy who's got injury history like he does, not very smart. Same thing with Peyton Wilson. A lot of Cowboys fans wanted Peyton Wilson, but again, a guy with injury concerns, and we need a guy who can play linebacker right now. And then later in the draft, Javion Sanders to steal other drafts for me, fourth round for a guy who I think really, if he went in the back end of the first round, I would not have been surprised at all. I think he's that kind of player. But again, the injury concerns. They went into this draft with a mindset: we need to surround Bryce Young with talent. We need to see how good he is, and they did exactly that, and they did a good job of it.
yeah. I mean, that's kind of what you got to do at this point. After the product that they put out there for him last year,
Just setting him up for
testing all
failure.
the pieces. Yeah. Um,
So they go out in the offseason, then they fill up the offensive line, and then they go out
yeah.
in the draft and they get him some weapons.
Yeah.
I
Are
like it.
you a Bryce believer? Do you think
I am
he's
a Bryce
good?
believer. I
I am
think
too.
that if you switch the situations, he would be better than CJ Stroud, and I still think he's a better player than CJ Stroud. There's a reason he was taken before him.
I
I
definitely
really think
like
Anthony
more.
Richardson is better. I think AR is better than both of them. But yeah, big believer. You like Bryce Young too?
Yeah. I think um the situation these guys go to is so important and people don't realize that enough. Um And I think to kind of transcend a horrible situation, you have to be like an all-time NFL legend.
Like a Justin Herbert kind of guy where you're just
Yeah.
so good it doesn't
Even a
matter.
Herbert, it's not like he was in a like we're talking about Bryce Young throwing to DJ Chark and the ghost of
Hmm.
Adam Thielen, and Herbert had Mike Williams and Keenan Allen.
Yeah.
Like the
Like his
one,
offensive line was bad, but he still had weapons.
yeah, like Andrew Luck. I think went into a decently
Yes.
bad situation. Obviously, the Colts were what? Were they 1-15, 0-16, something like that? Um, and he got lucky that like T.Y. Hilton popped that year. Um, and I still think Andrew Luck maybe tied or something like the rookie interception record, but was still like very good. I don't know.
Mhm.
That could be wrong. Maybe
Yeah,
no, maybe he just has the touchdown record. I could have that completely wrong. But like
I
he
think
was
he does have it.
all-time NFL great prospect. When you bring up who is the best quarterback prospect of all time, he's one of the first three names that you throw out
Mm,
there. And I don't think Bryce Young is necessarily that, but I still definitely believe in him. I will say though, he's got to show something this year.
yeah,
Like
it's
it's
kind of
pretty
a
make or break. Uh,
yes, exactly.
uh, but I feel pretty good about him moving forward.
Hmm. Yeah, you're asking like a guy who was behind a bad offensive line. Pretty much the only like replacement level player on that offensive line last year was Ike Ekwonu, and even then he didn't play as good as he did his rookie year. Uh, you're asking a guy who's thrown to future podcast hosts and like dads to
Yeah,
put up great numbers in the NFL. It's just not going to happen. Quarterback is a position where yeah, you got to be great, but it's so predicated on who's around you to be good. I'm thinking of a Trevor Lawrence, a guy who's good, but you're throwing a wide receiver threes all day. Obviously, he's not going to put up MVP numbers. To that Trevor Lawrence point again, like there's so many quarterbacks in the league who I think are worse than Trevor Lawrence, but they've got two wide receiver ones on the team, and so they're putting up better numbers than him. Like that's how the league works. When you've got great players around you, they're going to elevate the other ones as well.
definitely. Yeah, well, thanks for hopping on, man.
Of course. Thank you for
Really
having me.
appreciate it. I really like this. I'd like to do it again sometime in the future.
I agree.
Maybe some like season prediction type stuff. I think would be cool. Or like
Close to
division.
the end of the off season or something.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. So if you can send me your um links or just the usernames for your TikTok and Instagram, I'll put it in the description. Everyone go
Gotcha.
follow tag. That's where we're gonna get that one day. Um,
Yes.
thanks everybody for listening. Like, comment, subscribe. Let us know if you think we're dumb or if we're really smart. But thanks for watching. Peace.
Hopefully the second one.
Sorry, what? What'd you
Hopefully the
say?
second one. Hopefully the second one, not the first one.
Right,
Not the
right.
dumb part.
Exactly. All right. Peace out, everybody.